So the Gamers Holiday is coming up in just a few months. Of course, I'm referring to the E3 season. E3 is sadly no longer with us. Rest in peace, little buddy. But the Gamers Holiday lives on with various showcases planned for right around the same time frame. Xbox has already announced a summer showcase. They've made that loud and clear. PlayStation seems to have something planned as well, according to new rumors. And today we got another update, which actually might be very exciting when you start to think about it. Now, we're also going to talk about the future of gaming because a big article by IGN got posted today that claims that Xbox isn't the only one rethinking console exclusives. Is this actually true, though? Does this article have any merit at all? And we're going to explore all of that today. Before we do get started, though, do make sure to hit that subscribe button. Based on my analytics, 52% of my viewers still aren't subscribed, so let's make sure to change that today. That way you can stay up to date with all of the daily gaming news. I am here every Monday through Friday, so hit those buttons below. With that said, though, let's just go and jump right into it. So to start things off, the Hollow Knight Silksong news continues to pour in this week. This is actually the third day in a row that we're going to talk about Silksong, and that's because now a South Korean rating has been spotted online. This was filed back on February 20th, and this kind of makes all the recent developments make just that much more sense. I mean, we've seen this play out time and time again in the game industry. More often than not, when a game starts to get rated, news shortly follows then thereafter. So with everything that's happened over the last week, it definitely feels like Team Cherry is starting to ramp up for some type of Silksong announcement. As we talked about just a few days ago, an Xbox Store listing popped up on April 1st. And then just one day later, and this is what really kind of hammered it home for me, Xbox's Sarah Bond also teased an Xbox Game Pass Day 1 release. So I feel like it would be very strange for her to tease something like that if it was not for some type of incoming announcement. Now, I still don't want to get people's hopes up too much just in case, but if anything else, the evidence definitely seems to be stacking up here. A Hollow Knight Silksong release date could be revealed sometime very soon. Now, we also got an update for PlayStation Plus, and when you look at this, the month of April is probably one of their more impressive lineups to date. I've said this time and time again, but they really need more Day 1 games, and that's what we're going to get this April. Tales of Kanzaro will release directly into PlayStation Plus on April 23rd, and I think this looks like a potentially good game. I mean, we won't fully know it until we play it ourselves, but it really does remind me a lot of Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, which was an absolute fantastic game. They both have a very similar art style, and they are both Metroidvania type of games. So if anything else, the gameplay in Tales of Kanzaro looks smooth, and if you're a PlayStation Plus Extra subscriber, do keep that in mind that this is for Extra, so you will have to have one of the more expensive tiers, but if you do, you can try it out come April 23rd. Now, that's not quite everything here, though, because they also revealed some games for their Essential tier, which includes Immortals of Avium, Minecraft Legends, interestingly enough. Xbox apparently is supporting PlayStation Plus this month, and then also Skull the Hero Slayer. Now, I'd say that's already a relatively decent lineup, and then you can also throw Dave the Diver into that group as well. The only reason I'm talking about Dave the Diver separately, though, is just because they weren't exactly forthcoming in which tier it's dropping into. They just simply said in their PlayStation blog that it's heading to PlayStation Plus on April 16th. So it's a little unknown on which tier it's dropping into, but this is a fan favorite game. It's definitely a big inclusion for PlayStation Plus, and when you pair that with Tales of Kanzaro as well, I'd say this is a pretty good month for them overall. Okay, so let's go and shift gears here, though, because I think this year has been eye-opening in a lot of different ways. The game industry isn't nearly as healthy as what we would like it to be, and it just feels like there's some major questions looming in the background. What future does the console industry have? And obviously, we have the whole Xbox situation where they're taking a more multi-platform approach. That alone has been a major conversation in 2024. But according to a new article written by Destin over on IGN, they talked to several analysts, and according to them, Xbox, quote-unquote, isn't the only one rethinking console exclusives. So this got a lot of attention online. Obviously, a lot of people are wondering what PlayStation is up to. And once I read through it, I mean, I thought it brought up some interesting points. I think it lays the groundwork fairly well on why the game industry is in the situation that it's currently in. But at the same time, I don't necessarily agree with everything in this article, and I think they kind of reached with some of their claims. I'll come back to that here in just a moment, but the fact is, they are correct on one thing, and that is that the game industry is currently changing. They said that the entire industry is resetting to the commercial reality, with some companies realizing they have overexpanded, become unfocused in their strategies, or have become overstretched financially. Again, and we've talked about this several times this year, those ballooning budgets are the elephant in the room. You can't have this conversation about the future of gaming without realizing that AAA budgets are a huge problem for the game industry. Something that was mentioned a lot in this article is that the console industry is mostly stagnant generation over generation. If you look at the PlayStation 5, which, that's selling well historically, but when you compare it to the PS4, the PlayStation 4 is still slightly outpacing the PS5. And the Xbox Series is in a similar situation as well, if not even worse, with their hardware sales just falling off over the last year. Now, the reason that this is such a big problem is because while consoles are basically selling the same or, even slightly less, well, budgets are dramatically higher this generation. So that is a terrible combination to have. The idea is that bigger budgets will work if your fan base is growing. But that's not what's happening this generation, and that puts these games at high risk. And I mean, AAA games last generation was high risk, so, that's crazy to think about that it's even at higher risk now. So how exactly do they fix this problem? Well, there's a few different solutions, including tighter budgets or price increases, which, we could see possibly in the future. We'll see about all of that when the time comes. But the one scenario that both Xbox and PlayStation seems to be currently exploring is expanding beyond just their consoles. And that's what these analysts pointed out in this article. They claim that while pure console exclusives still go some way towards driving console sales, more so for Nintendo than others, it has become clear that gamers now expect to be able to play games on a variety of devices. Even in Japan, where the console has traditionally been dominant and 41% of gamers played a console game in the past year, only 14% of all gamers exclusively play on consoles according to our 2020 survey of Japanese gamers. Now, if you look at places like China or South Korea, you'll also notice that they heavily lean into things like PC and mobile gaming. And that's where PlayStation's strategy seems to be focused on. They've been putting a lot of effort into PC gaming. They went out and acquired Nixxes a couple years ago, and they've already ported several PlayStation games over to PC. And they've actually had some success, despite them mostly being staggered releases so far. Horizon Forbidden West just recently enjoyed a successful PC launch with a ranking in the top 10 this past week on Steam. And then you look at something like Helldivers 2, and I think that's a perfect example of the potential they have with day and date releases. Helldivers 2 so far has been one of the most successful launches of 2024. So the idea that they could double down on this PC strategy is not all that far-fetched when you start to think about it. And in fact, Sony themselves recently suggested that yes, they will increase their multi-platform push. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that involves the mobile side of things, how all that's going to shape up, because we haven't really seen their plans with mobile games. But I think in terms of PC gaming, the writing is pretty much on the wall here. PlayStation will, without a doubt, become much more acclimated on PC over the next decade. I think their multi-platform approach right now is strictly focused on mobile and including PC a lot more in the future. But, with that said, with both Xbox and PlayStation heavily supporting the PC platform, what does all this mean for the future of console gaming? I mean, it really just kind of feels like PC is entering its golden age, and you're going to get almost everything on PC eventually. But according to one analyst, you don't have to worry about console gaming. They said that none of the companies can afford to exit the console market as a platform holder without significantly reducing their games' revenue. So I expect them all to remain committed to the console market for years to come. They also mentioned the rise of handheld consoles, and, speaking of entering a golden age, handheld gaming is just incredible right now. And that's another way for Xbox and PlayStation to expand. I mean, the technology's there. We've seen that with the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, and the Legion Go, and it's only going to get better. By this point, I fully expect both PlayStation and Xbox to explore handheld options. And that's just another way for them to get their games in more consumers' hands. Where I really disagree with this article, though, is that they were trying to reach and include Nintendo in this discussion because apparently they're also expanding beyond just consoles because I guess they have game-related movies and theme parks. I don't really think that's the same thing at all. I mean, the Switch is the one console right now that's not stagnant generation over generation, and their games are selling incredibly well. So that really seems like a hard reach for me. I don't expect Nintendo to release PC games anytime soon. I mean, sure, they would have a lot of success if they did, but I think Nintendo is fairly happy with their results currently. Now, if the Switch 2 slows down in the future, and if their budgets are just too high, which, unlike the other two, they don't currently have that problem, well, then we can revisit this topic. But for the time being, there is a difference between Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox. Nintendo is the one platform holder that seems to have their budgets under control, which is why they aren't dealing with the same problems that Xbox and PlayStation are currently dealing with. So that's why I disagree with their inclusion in this article. I feel like it was kind of forced. But nonetheless, let me hear your thoughts on this topic below. What do you think about the future of console gaming, and how do you feel about PlayStation possibly ramping up their PC efforts going forward? Now, one last thing before we go, Ubisoft just announced a Ubisoft Forward showcase for June 10th. So go ahead and mark your calendars, and even though I'm not necessarily the biggest Ubisoft fan in the world, or at least with their modern games, there is actually potential this could be a big showcase. I mean, if you just look at this year alone, Assassin's Creed Red is one of their games expected to release. I mean, fans have begged for an Assassin's Creed game located in Japan for years and years, and it's finally happening with an expected release date for 2024. So we could finally get that full reveal come June 10th, and I think that alone will be exciting to see for a lot of fans. Assassin's Creed, of course, is very, very popular. And speaking of popular, of course, there's also Star Wars Outlaws, one of the biggest IP of all time. That is another game expected to release sometime this year. It looks pretty good, and it's really just one of the most ambitious Star Wars games that we've seen to date. So we might get another reveal with its release date at this showcase. And in fact, multiple ratings started to appear online here recently. I think this might actually get a soonish release date, unlike Assassin's Creed Red, which is expected for late 2024. Another game that could show up here, though, is something that leaked out late last year, the Beyond Good and Evil remaster. Ubisoft actually responded to the leaks last year because there was a lot of controversy around the pictures that surfaced online, and they basically said that those pictures don't represent the final product, and that they're excited to show us more in early 2024. Well, if you haven't noticed, they still haven't shown us anything, so I feel like they could just be pushing that into this Ubisoft Forward with a soonish release date. There's also a rumored roguelite Prince of Persia game developed by the Dead Cells studio. We just talked about this a few days ago, but if you missed that video, it's allegedly releasing into early access this year. So that's another potential announcement that could be made here, and I would say with those games alone, I feel like this would be a pretty good event. But, I mean, there's also other confirmed games that could possibly be here. Now, these are, I would say, a lot less likely, but they are in development, so they're at least worth mentioning, I guess we can say. Beyond Good and Evil 2, who knows when this game's going to release, but it is still apparently in development. I doubt we'll get any news on that game, but there is the Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake as well. They've been reworking that remake for the last couple of years after its initial announcement. Didn't exactly go over as planned. People were very upset with its art style, so maybe they'll finally reintroduce that game. And then lastly, there is also the Splinter Cell remake. This is probably my most anticipated Ubisoft game right now, but it is expected to be a 2025 or 2026 release. So depending on how far along they are with this game, we'll kind of decide on whether or not it's ready to show to the public. I'm crossing my fingers that we will get an update, but I mean, I guess there's only one way to find out. Tune in to Ubisoft Forward on June 10th. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this video. Definitely let me hear your thoughts about the game industry and its future. But until next time, peace out.